There are all kinds of fallacies which exist in society today, and many are used to put forward what appear, at least on the surface, to be reasonable arguments on a particular topic. But with a closer examination, you can actually highlight how these fallacies have arisen. And the standard one which is constantly being used is the anecdotal fallacy. This is where there's some details about an issue to paint a very vivid picture of the particular issue, but they lead to a hasty generalisation from an individual case to a much broader one, ignoring that there may be a great many factors at play, rather than just the single one which is being highlighted in the anecdote. An example of this is the story that shortly after a child was vaccinated, the child then developed autism. Therefore, the child developed autism result of the vaccination, and it follows that all autism is therefore a result of vaccination. It ignores the issues that signs of autism can appear at a very early age. A diagnosis, though, is difficult until the child is about 2 years old, and children get quite a few vaccines around about 18 months. So any child that's diagnosed with autism is almost certain to have had a recent vaccination, but that doesn't mean the two factors are causally linked. Another example is a fallacy of something called affirmative conclusion from a negative premise, which may seem a little complicated. It's where you prove or appear to prove that something's untrue, and then by describing something as different from the first case, because the first case was untrue, the second case must be true. Example of this might be that in history there's been no society that's developed that's been matriarchal in nature, or put it another way, no societies have been led by a whole series of women leaders. Since this is the case, then it must mean that only men are capable of leading a society. This fallacy is a fairly easy one to fall into, like the thinking that, say, evolution is not true and intelligent design is not evolution, therefore intelligent design must be true. Which leads us neatly into the next fallacy, the argument from ignorance, which, though it appears to be a rather terse and abrupt way of labelling something, it's an important fallacy to highlight. This can be statements like, I can't see how something as small as a human being can affect the climate on something as large as the Earth. Or, I don't see how an organism the size and complexity of an amoeba can evolve into something the size and complexity of a human being. Generally, this can be put into the category of science doesn't know everything. Leading on from this conclusion is that if science can't explain my particular issue, then my theory on it must be right. Sometimes the reason for this might be that the issue is not actually testable in the first place, for instance, not being able to prove a negative. Examples of this might be that science can't prove that ghosts don't exist, therefore ghosts, spirits and souls all must exist. Alternatively, since science cannot prove that telepathy doesn't exist, I must be able to train my mind to communicate indirectly with another brain over a very large distance. However, yet another fallacy that's really overlooked is the argument from authority. This is where just because someone's a respected authority on an area, everything that they say on a topic related to that particular area is accepted as being correct without the necessary evidence being there to back up the particular statement. Classic examples of this kind were that the tongue had a tongue map where different regions of the tongue were supposed to taste different flavours, or that humans actually had 24 pairs of chromosomes rather than 23. Part of the problem may be down to actually how large and complicated some subjects now are. Just because someone is a doctor doesn't mean that they know all of the side effects of all of the prescription drugs that are currently out there. Alternatively, the expert may be biased in some way, wanting to put forward a particular spin or a particular way on a topic. This can lead to something also called groupthink, where a group of experts try to come up with a consensus on a subject. Once that consensus has been achieved, any dissenting voice is then silenced, despite them having substantial contradictory evidence to the group's accepted view. These are just some of the fallacies that are out there. Do be on the lookout for them. They can crop up almost anywhere, but being alert to them may be less likely to fall for them.